Hi, today I'm going to show you something that almost nobody in Europe has seen yet on the road. A new brand, a new model, and a new candidate for the Premium Car Club. Here's the Exlantix ES, a 5-meter sedan that is just getting ready for its market debut in Poland. This is a pre-production version of the car, and naturally, this is the first test of this model in Poland. In theory, this car has everything it needs to compete with the Taycan or Lucid R, because like them, it's an electric sedan created according to the principle of look what we can do. And in practice, let's see if Europe will say, okay, you don't have to prove anything anymore because this really is premium. But what exactly does a premium car need to have? Well, a premium brand obviously looks interior specs, comfort, sound system, soundproofing, and finally the price, right? Because premium can't be cheap. But let's go step by step. When it comes to a premium brand, it's not that simple. Making a premium car is much easier. We look, we drive, we feel, but it's the brand that becomes premium. Only when there's a social consensus, when most people think it's premium, at least most of its potential customers, can it truly be considered premium. And in Europe, that's not easy. The Exlantix ES avoids a forced futuristic look, opting instead for a timeless fastback silhouette. Notice the interesting use of LEDs. There's a strip running across the entire width of the hood, continued in the headlights, but it goes even further. The designers chose not to light up the grille, but instead illuminated the area where air intakes are found in combustion engine cars. Yeah, so we have premium LED accents, but they're done in a way that's hard to criticize on the internet. There's not even a classic logo here, just a sign that serves as the logo with its characteristic E in the brand name. Here we're at an element Europe defines as premium, unlike the rest of the world. In Europe, LEDs are standard, while matrix lights are premium. The Exlantix ES specification doesn't mention matrix lights, at least for now. We'll see what happens when the final price list comes out, but for now, it's LEDs. Of course, I took a night photo for you, but that's as usual. In the second half of the film, from the side we see 21-inch rims. Notice the branded tires as standard. Everything here is designed for aerodynamics. Retractable handles, proper covers on the cameras. As for decorations, basically only the ES on the C-pillar, and that's it. Why? Because here, the aerodynamic drag coefficient is 0.205, which is absolute top class in the world of sedans. This exceptional result should be noticeable in energy consumption measurements on the highway at 120 and especially at 140 kilometers per hour. You'll see the measurements later in the video. And as for the door handles, look, their opening mechanism was tested down to -40 degrees. Now I'm going to lean on these handles like this. I'll tilt a bit so they really have a hard time, and there's some pushing force on these handles. That's 160 newtons, which means it lifted me, which is over 16 kilograms. At the back, we have a spoiler that extends automatically, and it does so in 2 stages by 9 or 15 degrees, depending on the speed. Besides that, the styling is consistent without any shouting, stickers, or unnecessary emblems. I know it doesn't make much sense in an electric car, but tradition must be honored. We have to lift the hood, so here's a handful of technical data. For the European market, a dual-motor, all-wheel drive version is planned, with 480 horsepower and 660 Nm of torque, which allows it to accelerate to 100 km/h in 3.7 seconds. These numbers are definitely for the premium segment, but they're just catalog numbers. I'll share my measurements soon. The nickel-manganese cobalt battery has 100 kWh, and the 805 platform allows charging at up to 290 kV, which means you can go from 30 to 80% in 15 minutes. Those are premium parameters too, and I'll check them now. Technical note, 46,000 miles. That's the amount of torque you need to apply to bend the aluminum frame of this car by 1 degree, which is over 4.5 tons. It's placed about a meter from the edge of the frame, and it bends by just 1 degree. Compare that to the Miata, which needs 7,000 Nm, or the Tesla Model 3, which needs 25,000 Nm. The only car with a better parameter is the Lucid Air 48,000 Nm, which is almost identical. Finally, we have pneumatic suspension with multiple height settings. Standard ground clearance is 13 centimeters, but it can be lowered to 12 or raised to 18 centimeters. I just drove up the hill and now I'm coming back down. Additionally, there's CDC, meaning shock absorbers with adjustable damping that react within 1 to 5 milliseconds. The manufacturer doesn't state this directly, but it's almost certainly the same technology you'll find in premium cars from BMW to Porsche. But just so it's not all sweet, in the configurator for a car that's almost 5 meters long with a 3-meter wheelbase, I didn't see the option to add a rear wheel steering axle. Many premium cars have this either as an option or even as standard, and I think it would be useful here as well. And the brakes, listen, aluminum 6-piston brakes developed in-house stop this car from 100 km/h in a distance of 32.9 meters. And that's another highly competitive result, once again better than almost anything you can think of right now. Based on measurements, only the most expensive Lucid Air and the Taycan will be exceptions again. Admit it, we can only guess at all this from outside the video. We simply see an elegant sedan that doesn't show off too much, but beneath that calm exterior hides a car built with the principle that price is no object. By the way, Exlantix is entering the Polish market with 2 cars, not only the ES sedan, but also a large, nearly 5-meter long SUV called the ET. These electric cars are essentially twins. However, in my opinion, this is quite a good strategy because the premium clientele basically splits into those who prefer large sedans and those who prefer big SUVs. So with 2 models, they couldn't have made a better choice. On the outside there was minimalism, so on the inside let's show what we can do, but not with Baroque extravagance, but again technologically, because it's about design. Except for 1 or 2 exceptions, everything is still in order here. Let me close these frameless doors first. I'm doing it by hand, but here you just need to press a button, step on the brake, or even tap a button on the screen. And honestly, it takes a bit of getting used to, especially when opening, but that's how it is for me with any car that has these automatic assisted doors. It just doesn't fit, because there are different situations when it can really be quite unpredictable. For example, if we park next to a pillar in the garage and press this button from inside the door, will they close as I want, or will they open? Checking now, I'm pressing to open. Yes, I would have hit the pillar already. Here's another interesting fact, because the documentation says that these doors are operated by a silent motor. You can hear it a little, but an even more interesting fact is about the wipers. Apparently, the wipers are operated by a silent motor. Attention! You can actually only hear the wipers moving, but you can't hear the motor. The question is, isn't it like this in all premium cars? And now, a little technical curiosity. That's what the manufacturer claims at 60 kilometers per hour. A conversation inside the car will give us 84% voice clarity. I've never heard of such a parameter, so I decided to check it myself. So this is the reference point in the parking lot. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, test recording, voice clarity test. And now the same at 60 kilometers per hour. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, test recording, voice clarity test. Then I uploaded both recordings to Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer and asked it to check the difference in voice clarity. There is actually such a test. He knows how, and here is the result. The silence here is filled by a 23-speaker audio system with Dolby Atmos, including subwoofers and speakers in the headrests. And here I'll return to the exception when it comes to the perfect arrangement of the interior. Just look at this beautiful speaker. Someone put it here, possibly unaware electronics would later be placed in front of it. The screen, well, the screen covers it a bit, which is a shame because it really looks nice. Besides that, we have leather Napa massages, really premium. Anyway, there are quite a few features that regularly appear in premium cars, like this LED strip, for example. Now, let's move on to the interior of this car. I'll show you 2 or 3 interesting things here, and then I'll move on to pulling the handles, feeling the plastics, and looking for useful compartments. Interesting fact, the screen in front of the driver clearly wasn't a last-minute addition. It's actually an integral part, beautifully incorporated into the cockpit. Look, this line basically starts on the door, runs through the door, across the entire cockpit. Here it transitions into the screen with this curved glass and then ends on the door on the left side. And here you can see that someone was thinking from the very beginning about doing it exactly this way. The second thing that makes me wonder a bit is this strip. It's kind of crystal, glass, plastic, whatever it is, that's what it is. This is an ideal place for several buttons. Meanwhile, the manufacturer definitely didn't skimp on physical buttons, because here we have physical buttons, and here as well we have physical buttons. Look here, the drive mode selection options have been moved, so it actually makes sense to be here, maybe, but since he had to put the buttons somewhere, he put them right here. Look, they're physical. Buttons for changing the lights, physical buttons for controls, window controls, seat controls. Where it was necessary, we got our beloved physical buttons. Here, though, it seems they just decided it's not needed, not that anyone's trying to save money. Everything is on the screen, which is highly advanced. I won't take up half an hour of your time here, because that's how long it would take to go through all these options, and there really are a lot of them. And now we move on to the storage compartments. So there's one compartment here, then 2 cup holders, a huge compartment on the right side. Here we have a 12.5 outlet USB-C and USB-B. And we also have air vents here. On the right side, we have a compartment that we can open from the screen, but note that in the settings I saw an option to set a personal identification number code that will secure this compartment from being opened. Here's another compartment. There are none up here, but the doors have beautiful compartments. They really are big, spacious and convenient, although they could be a little less plastic or more flocked. And here too, and in this way, I'm showing you the last but probably the biggest of these compartments, which is located in the lower part of the tunnel. Here, in the upper part of the cockpit, we have a material that, although it's hard, is very pleasant to the touch, almost as if it's slightly flocked. Then lower down, here we already have soft leather across the entire width of the cockpit, and below this LED strip and the air vents. As we can see, we move lower, where again we have plenty of foam under the leather. It continues here. Again, we have foam under the leather. Here it's still foam under the leather. As we move further down, here it also bends under your finger. And only really from underneath, under this tunnel, do we have some hard plastic. Everywhere here, wherever we might potentially touch anything, everything is soft and leather. On the doors, again, soft leather with foam. Here there's something, I don't know if it's wood, it looks like wood, but if it is wood, it's a shame it wasn't finished in a way that makes it obviously wood. It's so smooth. Lower down, as you can see, we have leather with foam again on the left side. The armrest is quite soft. The door handle is also leather and soft on the right side. Again, we have leather and softness, so basically everywhere you touch there's leather and foam. And a good intention from the manufacturer to convince us that this car really didn't cut corners on the equipment. Here, as you can see, everything is in Alcantara. The headliner, all in Alcantara. The pillars, as you can see, all in Alcantara. Beautiful leather with nice stitching. It all really gives a very good impression. And now let's check if that impression won't be ruined by any creaking. Silence. 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 And here I try to pull silence, 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 silence. Oh, I press on this plastic. Nothing here. Maybe I'll grab here. Nothing, nothing. Oh, I almost managed to break something off, but I think it's the roulette that's creaking, and what else? I'll pull on the right side, I'll pull and waste time again, and so on until the end. And the whole thing is really very solidly assembled and screwed together. I found only one spot that makes a strange sound, but that's not because of bad fitting. It's just the haptic feedback of the button confirming that the button works. Look, there's a button here that changes the display on the screen when you press it on the right. You hear that? It's a part that's supposed to vibrate and let us know that the button has been pressed, and this part makes, well, strange noises. The lighting at night is quite minimalistic. We have 4 strips on the doors. You see, we have this main strip running across the whole dashboard, and we have the speaker illuminated, and that's basically it. And it's not a matter of this being a pre-production car, because look at the visualization, which probably shows us everything this car is supposed to be able to do. And here we don't even have illuminated footwells, but anyway, we do have illuminated buttons on the steering wheel. The stalks under the steering wheel are not illuminated, and the seat adjustment is also not illuminated, but the buttons are. Of course, here for the windows and for opening and closing the doors, the door pockets and footwells are not illuminated, as I mentioned. Here on the right side, nothing is illuminated, not even the glove compartment. And finally, the compartment in the armrests is also not illuminated. Although we have illuminated USB ports above our heads, we have 2 reading lights, and of course, we also have sun visors with nice lighting. The good news is that the glove compartment on the right side is illuminated. I'll get back to the color controls. We can make this strip in the middle really bright, definitely too bright, but this is okay. There can be an option for it to pulse to the rhythm of the music. It can also move in strips like this. That's called a streamer. There's also breathing, where different colors transition from one to another. They do their thing, living their own life. You can turn off just the front, leave only the speaker and the 4 doors, but the static one is fine, especially since you can do quite a lot with it. We can choose a lot of colors here, whatever suits us, or even a color combination. While we're still waiting at the charger, I'll show you how the cameras work here at night. I think that's always the best test of the sensor's quality, so of course we have a lot of different options here. We can look forward, backward, to the left, to the right, or at all 4 sides. We can also look at it from a 3D perspective and rotate it like this to analyze the situation around us. And when it comes to quality, I would say it's very close to top quality, if not top quality. Because here, basically somewhere in the background, very, very far away, you can see some noise, but here around the car, everything is really razor sharp. Time for the 2-meter guide test. We adjust the steering wheel electrically from the screen, so I won't show the adjustment range since it takes time. Now it's pulled out and raised to the maximum towards me, which means I'm positioned pretty well in relation to it. Why pretty well? Because there's no extra room. Since if I wanted to move closer, unfortunately my knee wouldn't let me move the seat any further forward. That's because we have a wide tunnel here that curves beautifully into the console, and that curve is exactly what my knee bumps into. A little means actually just right. I'm positioned well, but it doesn't give me any extra space. There's about 4 fingers of space above my head, so we fit here easily. We also have a beautiful sunroof here, which I'll talk about in a moment. In the back, I'm sitting pretty high, even when I've lowered myself as much as I can. We adjust the seats completely mechanically. Here we have real buttons on the doors. And in addition, we have lumbar support adjustment with physical buttons at the bottom of the seat as well. We have massages here, we have heating and ventilation here, but going back to the 2-meter test, it is of course passed. I mentioned one thing at the beginning of the video, that this is a pre-production car, and in its specification, it clearly states that we have ventilation and massages here. Also, on the rear seat, but on the screen, you can literally see that it's only available in the front seats because it's on the right side. Of course, you have the full set of adjustments and massages, just like in the driver's seat. So in the back there's only heating, but that's just a matter of this pre-production unit. I fit perfectly behind myself. I have about a dozen centimeters of space in front of my knees here, and basically this way it doesn't bother me that the driver's seat is practically lying on the floor. There's no way to even slide a shoe in there, but there's space for shoes here in front of the seat, so this aspect isn't important to me at all because of that. However, I don't lack headroom, so the 2-meter tall person test is immediately passed, but there isn't any extra space left. Ultimately, we have a fastback body here, so the roof has to slope down, but it doesn't do this at the expense of 2-meter tall people in the back seat. Besides that, what can you complain about here and what can you praise? You can complain about the window not retracting fully. Many cars have this issue, and here as well, a piece of the window sticks out. On the other hand, you can definitely praise the completely flat floor, just like in electric cars. There's also quite advanced control here with the little screen when it comes to climate, seat heating, music, and even, listen, you can control the doors here using a button on the screen to start opening or completely close the doors. As for the standard gadgets on the rear seat, we have 2 cup holders here, a slot for phones, and the ISOFIX connectors are hidden like this. And we have 2 quite well contoured seats in the back, although the car is of course registered for 5 people. We also have storage pockets behind both seats. We have 2 USB-C ports and I have to admit, very spacious door pockets. We have plenty of light above our heads here, and we have a huge panoramic sunroof. In the specs, I read that we have 2.1 square meters of glass here, and I thought it would be like this. From the driver's height all the way to the tailgate, but that's not the case here. We have a different sunroof that ends here because there's a massive reinforcement in the roof, and from here all the way to the trunk lid. It's just one big piece of glass. Notice these nice stitches and these extra shapes, such beautiful finishing here by the headrest. And all of this suggests that everything is so elaborate and so premium that no, you won't be putting any cabinets in this car. No, nothing like that. Look, you can definitely fold down this rear backrest. Here we have 2/3 and 1/3. And indeed, you can use this car not only for luxurious travel from point A to point B, but also to transport something larger. I think it's worth mentioning 2 more things. The key, which looks like this, Exlantix with 4 buttons on a circle, and the card, which thanks to the appropriate near-field communication module on the B pillar, can also replace the key. If we just want to tap the card, lock the car, and have this little thing in our pocket instead of a slightly bigger key. Of course, the fact that it works with a card means that theoretically you could also add it to your phone and have it as a virtual card. Speaking of the phone, there's also an app. For now, it's not very advanced yet, and I haven't found all the features there that I would like to see. But I have to say it's already available in Polish, which suggests that it's being developed specifically for the Polish market. And at this pre-production stage, it's only about halfway there. Time to take a look at the trunk. Here we have 480 liters of capacity. Of course, the shape of the trunk and access to it are just like in sedans. There's really nothing to discuss here. However, the finish is just like in premium class cars. Everything is beautifully finished, the hinges are hidden, and there's an interesting surprise. Well, part of the floor is movable, meaning you can lift this section here. There's a handy little loop inviting you to put your finger in, lift it up, and what do we see? Metal. I don't really know why, since there's no storage compartment there. What's the point of lifting it? But that's just how it is. The manufacturer doesn't share the capacity of this enlarged trunk, but you can assume it's at least twice as much. But that's not all. Because we also have a trunk in the front, or rather, we would have a trunk in the front if we were testing this car, for example, in a few months, when we would get the production version. This one is a pre-production model, so the frunk, which is listed in the specs as a 50-liter trunk, is blocked off here. It's worth adding more numbers. Well, this car can have a tow hook. Our pre-production test model doesn't have it, but yes, it can have a tow hook. Maximum trailer weight with brakes is 1,500 kilograms. the car's maximum payload is 2,736 kilograms and curb weight is 2,230 kilograms, giving a payload of 506 kilograms. A clear driving impression, and I'll start with probably the biggest distinguishing feature of this car compared to other electric vehicles on the Polish market, namely the air suspension, which, especially when combined with the 800-volt architecture, makes this really one of the very, very, very few standouts. You can imagine everything that air suspension offers, and it's all here. Of course, the ride comfort, especially at higher speeds. The car kind of glides over the road, and we can imagine all of this even before we get into the car. And the test drive basically confirms all these assumptions. On the other hand, cars from outside the European market or cars from the Chinese market usually have a specific type of suspension that makes you prefer to drive straight ahead, to drive comfortably, and not really think about sharp turns or taking corners precisely. It's a different philosophy, handled differently outside Europe. And here, thanks to the fact that we have pneumatic suspension as standard, we already have a comfortable ride. As a result, you can focus on making sure the car not only drives comfortably, but also that it can handle corners. And that's been used perfectly here, because we really have a car that can glide over any bump. It can go over bigger speed bumps in a way that only air suspension can, and at the same time it can also react very precisely in corners. And really, I'll talk more about that during the Moose test. Considering its size and weight, it handles very well, and that gives you pleasure. So here the air suspension has done much more than just provide a comfortable ride. It has addressed a certain philosophical difference between the European approach to tuning cars and how it's done outside of Europe. The second thing is soundproofing, and here, even when reading the specifications, you can see that the manufacturer puts a lot of emphasis on good soundproofing for this car. And I have to admit that all these glued windows all around, on three sides plus above me, really provide excellent acoustic insulation. And I don't know if this is the absolute world champion, probably not, but when it comes to the generally set, somehow, I don't know, subjectively premium level, it's definitely soundproofed here. I'm driving 70 here, and I don't have to raise my voice. Nothing is stopping me from going even faster, and I still don't have to raise my voice. Of course, I can't say there's absolutely no difference here. Some background noise starts to build up with speed, but it's not really noise. I don't know what I'm hearing, since I don't hear the engines at all. The suspension working here. Well, obviously on a smooth road we won't hear the suspension working. Anyway, I need to go back because I didn't mention this when I was talking about the tire pneumatics. It's very quiet here. The wheel arches are well soundproofed and little noise comes through the windows. While recording, I was talking to the cameraman and closing the window when he said I looked like a fish in an aquarium during the second half of my sentence. He couldn't hear anything, only knew I was talking. It was total silence, so it worked both ways. Anyway, it's really a well soundproofed car. Now, the engine power, just for the record, because it's obvious they have 480 horsepower under the hood. There's no need to wonder whether the car will be where you want it, when you want it, in any situation, at any moment. You can step on the gas and basically you're there. And I'll emphasize it once again, without any engine noise, which I really like. A few cars can do that, so you don't hear that thin, whiny sound of electric motors. Here, there's none of that at all. Pressing the gas just gives your back a massage because the car accelerates so quickly. That sums up how sudden it is. It's not like it will always do that, because it all depends on the settings. So, by the way, here on the steering wheel, I have the right button. In eco mode, I press the gas and it goes like that. But in sport mode, watch out, I press the gas and it immediately starts accelerating. Comfort mode is essentially an intermediate setting between eco and sport, offering features expected from both modes. There's also a snow mode or a custom mode, which lets you define how the steering works, the suspension height, the suspension damping, and even how the brake pedal responds. And here it's worth noting that, unlike many other cars from the Far East market, this car in sport mode makes the brake pedal feel just a bit sportier, but it doesn't snap your head back the moment you barely touch the brake pedal. I've experienced that many times. Now we're leaving the ring road and heading into the city. And speaking of the city, there's maneuverability, the size 3 meters of wheelbase. All of this means that this car obviously isn't a small, agile city hatchback. So if it had a rear-wheel steering system, it could definitely surprise us. As it is, let's just say it behaves on the road as expected for its size. Generally, if I were to change or tune something in this car for myself, it would be the driver's position relative to the steering wheel. Either I would move the steering wheel a bit higher, or I would lower the seat slightly, because it seems to me that the steering wheel is resting a bit too much on my knees. Of course, I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who's 2 meters tall. It's not exactly a sporty setup. I mean, it's definitely very comfortable for long trips, but it's not entirely convenient when it comes to sharper maneuvers. Because sometimes my hand hits my knee, and I prefer either to sit lower or have the steering wheel higher. And since we're talking about turning the steering wheel, a few words about the steering system, where I'd only improve one thing, literally just one. Because once you start turning the steering wheel, they behave very predictably and precisely. The car turns eagerly, and the suspension makes cornering truly enjoyable. But at the 0 point, the steering wheel feels kind of slightly frozen. And breaking it out of the 0 point always requires some effort. Well, I would say it's a bit more effort than I would like, and this happens both in comfort mode, sport mode, and eco mode. That's only available in eco mode, because it's more eco-friendly to drive perfectly straight than to make gentle curves, since that increases resistance and rolling, but not in comfort or sport mode. It works very similarly, and I feel it the most during the moose test, where you're driving straight, something happens in front of the car, you want to change direction quickly, you yank the steering wheel to the left, and I can literally feel the stitching on the inside of the steering wheel scratching my skin because it takes that much effort. I'm not a fan of that excessive resistance at the 0 point, even if you can justify it technically or ecologically. What about the moose test after sharply turning the wheel from 0? The car obediently makes a jump to the left, a jump to the right, and keeps going. And for its weight, it does it really quite decently, but only when you start yanking it around. Precisely during the moose test, I realized that those good branded tires on the first assembly are not a coincidence, because the tire really works very hard during such maneuvers. You could feel that at the very beginning of the maneuver, it was really gripping the asphalt hard to react quickly and change direction. So it's not a matter of someone trying to prove that they're not saving money on anything here. And that's why they buy a top European tire. Only because this tire really is a reasonable pair, which means that transferring the loads, yes, of a body weighing well over 2 tons onto the asphalt will happen as intended. And finally, let's do a live loading test and see how it will look. The maximum power here with this charger is 350 kWh. These are 805 chargers. So theoretically, we should be able to use the full potential of this architecture and reach well above 200 kWh. Will that happen? We'll find out in a moment. Charging at 20%, okay? Maybe at this lower battery charging level, the battery management system will want to save it a bit and won't give full power. My dear friends, and I think this is the end of dreams about higher power, I'll explain to you what happened. Well, first of all, after reaching 75%, it's no surprise that the power drops, because naturally you should protect the battery and start slowing down here. Our best chance for top power was likely right at the start. The problem is somewhere around 20, 40, maybe 50%, but the thing is, I arrived here at 20%. The battery was cold, I couldn't prepare it for charging because there's no manual option. It couldn't know that I was heading to a fast charger because the navigation wasn't working, so before it warmed up and got ready, We reached the point where hitting 200 wasn't an option either, so I feel a bit unsatisfied and like I missed the chance to brag that I at least made it to 200. But it is what it is. In the end, like I said, we're sitting in a pre-production car, and now, as promised, we'll start the measurements with acceleration. Here we have 452, and in the other direction I got 446, which averages out to around 4.5, which is clearly a longer time than the 3.7 promised by the manufacturer. But let's remember, this is a pre-production car, and there were several dozen kilograms of equipment on board, as well as a not so small driver. And now the braking result from 134 to 99, regardless of what the manufacturer declared. This is an excellent result for a car that weighs 2,230, plus over 100 kilograms for the driver, plus a full trunk of equipment. So this shows both the effectiveness of the brakes and of course the quality of the tires that are installed here for the first assembly. So if this was a production version, or if the driver was a bit slimmer, well, I suppose it would be possible to get it lower, especially since this is probably only the result of the fourth braking attempt. If I had pressed the brake that hard the first time, I suppose I could have shaved off a few more tenths, at least a meter. You're probably wondering about the cost. There isn't an official price list yet, and I won't speculate. Well, I assume that Concentrary will want to surprise us with the price as usual, although I suspect it probably won't qualify for electric car subsidies, considering what's been packed inside here. Honestly, I prefer to test cars with a known price list, because when we look at it through the lens of price, we see a bit more. But even without it, you can see here that we have a comfortable, elegant car that has everything it needs to fight for its place on the market. Premium technology built from the ground up, a premium feel inside, and that driving comfort. I'm curious what the final specs and price will be, but I don't think I'll take the risk now. They say a lot about this car being ready for Europe, but the question is whether Europe is ready for this car. We'll find out when the manufacturer reveals all the cards. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Remember to subscribe, and see you in the next videos. Bye.